picks and bets for the DP World Tour this week, but I am joined by Ryan Baroff to talk about the European Ryder Cup team. Ryan, hello.
Tom, thank you for having me. Looking forward to an awesome week.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be great. I think if you'd have asked me 6 to 8 months ago about this, I know you've always been a pretty European homer, right? I think if you asked me 6 to 8 months ago, I'd have thought we had no chance. Like, I genuinely thought it was going to be a Whistling Straits repeat, even with the course advantage, even with the home soil angle. When did you think? I mean, did you always believe in Europe all the way along from kind of 2 years ago, or how's the kind of timeline of you believing in Europe gone?
No, it's definitely been more recent. I mean, I don't know how you could feel good about them after Whistling Straits.
Yeah.
I mean, they got smashed and half the team was over 40. So you kind of knew that team wasn't going to last. But no, the narrative has certainly switched. You know, we spent a lot of this year watching like the European points and trying to cope with, you know, Yannick Paul and Adrian Otaegui and Adrian Moron possibly being on this team. But it got rounded out by some really strong players. And the top of the European team is just in awesome form right now. You know, Rory and Rom, I mean, don't have to say much about them. Obviously, Hovland won the FedEx Cup. Aberg is here. Nikolai's playing great. Lowry seems to have broken out of his slump. So I just think they have all the momentum, and there's a reason why they haven't lost at home in 30 years.
Yeah, the timing on the Lowry efforts at the Irish Open and Wentworth were key. I mean, look, I was very anti Shane Lowry for a long time, right? Like I was slightly worried about him being on the team, thought he was a bit of a weak link, and everyone kind of pointed to the fact that, you know, he's the type of player you can't leave out. And I sort of was quite open in the fact that I said I'm sure he will probably play well at those two events. It's just I felt that Moronk should have gone based on previous form. Now, I got over that pretty quickly. Like, it doesn't really matter to me whether it's Moronk, Lowry, Aberg, Koigard, really. I think that you're focusing on the top 6-7 guys in that team, right? So I think ultimately, in the end, the right decisions were made. I guess the real difference maker, I think, for the European team was Robert McIntyre getting that final spot on the points list, because he doesn't seem to have it right now.
Yeah, but I mean, I would say for the last year and a half, he hasn't had it, but he's gone through these peaks and valleys, right? He was off the face of the earth for a while, showed a little form, fell off again, then he won, right? He won at this golf course, obviously, and then almost won the Scottish. So I think he has the upside. And again, he's going to play 4 balls. He's probably going to play 1 match before singles. He's going to play with a veteran, right? He can easily go out and make 6-7 birdies on his own ball, and it'd be a huge win for him. So I don't think that spot mattered as much. If it was him, if it was Moronk, if it was Yannick Paul, they were probably only going to play 2 sessions anyways.
Yeah, I think the thing is with Europe historically, when you look, right, they don't ever sit anyone out until the singles. Like, that's just not a thing for them. And I think really in the Ryder Cup in general, people don't really do that. I think he's the most live person to do that. I think there is a definite possibility that he does just sit until the singles, and you just hope that he just goes out and does it for his, benefit. You don't want that to happen because it's maybe a once in a lifetime opportunity for him. I think that all the videos coming out are that he's struggling with form and he's struggling to find his swing, and we know that he's kind of lost it over the last couple of weeks. But as you said, he's this kind of player that can just turn it on at any point. And it's not that long ago that he went head to head with Rory McIlroy at the Scottish Open, and we're talking about the excellent form Rory McIlroy's in, which he obviously is, and to get beat by 1 shot is, I just don't know how much, I guess, the opinion would change on McIntyre if he'd have just won that event rather than Rory coming and stealing off him, I guess.
Yeah, I think I agree. Wins always skew it a little bit. He's going to have really good vibes all week. Being his first Ryder Cup, a course that he's won at. He seems to be friendly with Rory. I'm sure they obviously don't get to see each other or play very much golf together, but it seems like they're friendly. I'm sure he gets on very well with Lowry, who was a guy who he may play with. I saw Justin Rose's name floated out there a bit that he might play with him. So I don't think he's going to sit all the way to singles. I think he's going to play that last Saturday afternoon group on his own ball with Justin Rose probably, and then hopefully carry some momentum into singles on Sunday.
Yeah, so I think this is the really important segue here, is that the two names you mentioned as possible partners for McIntyre if he does play was Rory McIlroy and Justin Rose. And two really important points. One, I think that Justin Rose might be more important than people suspect he might be, in the fact that I think he will play on day one with Fitz. And Fitz has really struggled in the Ryder Cup so far, but they are keen to persevere with him for obvious reasons, like obviously a great player. He went out twice with Westwood, played really poorly at Whistling Straits. I think if they can get him going with Rose early, that could be a real partnership for those two guys. And then, as you say, he could be the factor and the veteran presence to take out someone like a McIntyre, even a Højgaard, I think. So I think Rose has got a lot to play. And I think the other point about McIlroy is my concern on McIlroy is that I was hoping it was going to be Rory and Aberg for like 4 matches. It doesn't appear to be the case. It looks like it's going to be Hovland and Aberg. The thing with me, and this is hard to kind of frame without it getting a little bit confusing, but like to me, if you're going to play Rory and Aberg together, you've got the dynamic set of kind of best rookie versus the veteran player, the two best drivers of the golf ball in the event itself, and you just hope that they're basically unbeatable by that kind of metric, and they just dominate from that respect. I think when you put Hovland and Aberg together, who have this kind of similar skill set, but I find that weird. Like, I know there's obviously the language in the situation, and they're obviously getting on quite well, and there's probably something statistical to it. But I feel like they'd almost be better separated with their two off the tee games rather than putting those two together. Whereas I think if you were going to do it with Rory and Aberg, it would make more sense.
Yeah, it's kind of tough because they're both guys who I think Europe trusts a lot and who are going to play. I mean, I expect Hovland to play every session. Aberg's probably going to play 3 or 4. But they're also, like, they're young, but also Hovland's kind of the veteran here.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, one of the is that Rory is way more flexible with who he can play with personality-wise, right? I think you can put him with Lowry, obviously. You can put him with Aberg. You could put him with Tommy Fleetwood, which I think we would see. You could put him with Tyrrell Hatton, right? You can put him with Justin Rose. Like, you can put him with anybody. Hovland, coming off of 0 points at Whistling Straits, where, again, they jumped him around, but he went 0-2 with Tommy Fleetwood as a partner, and they probably just want to avoid that, even though there's no reason to avoid that. So I think that may be playing into it a little bit as well.
I think did he get a half maybe with Tommy?
Maybe a half, yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't win any matches.
Yeah.
He didn't win anything.
He went winless, but got the half, and then I think him and Morikawa went like better ball 58 or something in the singles, right? But I think the thing is, and I think to your point about Rory McIlroy and his personality thing, it's almost to his detriment. Like, when he went out and played so well with Thomas Pieters at Hazeltine, it was like, right, let's just rinse and repeat and do the same thing with Ollison. And it didn't really work in the Golf National. Then he gets asked to go out with Poulter to try and reimagine Medina 9 years later, and it, strangely doesn't pan out. Like, it almost feels like he's just been that guy that, okay, Rory, like, whatever we decide to do, you're just going to have to put up with it. I think that's going to be the difference in this Ryder Cup, is that if they can get his pairing right. I mean, obviously, first of all, like, Europe have got the edge in terms of, history in Europe, in terms of potentially the course, some people would say. I just think getting that pairing right and getting them in the right foursomes is really important.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, again, it's I don't want to look too much at Whistling Straits because the makeup of the team was so different.
Yeah.
But it just didn't seem like there was a plan. Like, the plan was Rahm and Sergio. That was the plan. But then after that, there were no, like, Rory played with Poulter. He played with Lowry. And then Hovland played with Fleetwood. And then he played with Wiesberger. And he played with Paul Casey. And then Casey played with Hatt. Like, they were just all over the place. And I don't think that's going to be the case. I think you're going to see the same pairings go out a lot for Europe. And I think Luke Donald, rightfully so, is going to lean on those top 6 to 8 guys for almost every match. Yeah,
and I think that's a little bit of a departure from recent years where they've been keen to get everyone 2 or 3 matches right. And I think you're right. I think from an analytical standpoint of Eduardo Molinari being on that kind of vice captaincy, they're just going to figure out, how to play these guys better. And if that means that the Hovland and Aberg thing is great, then so be it. Like, I'm not sure. And we've seen it in the past with you know, Fleetwood and Molinari, in the sense of like they knew they'd be. I think they knew that they'd be a great foursomes pairing, but didn't know they would be a good four balls. And then it just happened that they, won 4 and 5 games each. But so you almost stumble across a good pairing there. I think there's two things I think about this. One, that I think Rose is going to be really important in the sense that he can be kind of paired with anyone, but he's also that grinder. And I also think that Straka could have a decent thing to play here, which is wild to me. Like, I wouldn't have ever put my European hinges on Sepp Straka, but I think he's a really good I think he could be a really good four-ball player. Like, I don't know how good he is foursomes, but
he makes it. Yeah, I mean, that guy can fill it up. He can putt, and he could be the best iron player in the field any week.
Yeah, and I think like he could basically go with anyone. He doesn't need anyone to help him in four balls. That's the whole beauty of four balls, that you just let him go and do his thing.
Yep.
So let's kind of put a little structure to this. Like, let's think about who we think are going to go 5 sessions, who we think can be kind of the top point scorers, and go from there. So I think we're in agreement that 5 sessions is Rory, Rahm, and Hovland. I think one of them is going to not going 4 for some reason, but that's the 3 that you can put your bow on for the most likely candidates for 5 this time around.
Yeah, and I think if I had to pick one who only played 4, it's probably going to be Rory.
Agreed.
I think, I mean, you saw him; he did not play 5 at Whistling Straits. Obviously, he always has a lot going on, and he doesn't mind taking a break. But I expect, and again, just based on the pairings that I expect Hovland and Aberg to be so good that you can't sit them. And I think starting with that Rahm Hatton group that seems like we are inevitably going to get, I think that's a pretty strong pairing that's not going to be broken up this week.
And I think even if it was broken up, Ryan, like, I think that they would give Rahm someone good again. Do you know what I mean? Like, when they split him up from Sergio, they put him with Hatton. Whereas, like, I could see Rory having to go from Fleetwood to Lowry, which I think is actually a significant drop off, and from Fleetwood to, I don't know, like someone completely different, Nikolai. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that's a concern for me. Whereas Rahm and Hovland, I think, would be pretty set. Like, as you say, Hovland and Aberg, if they play well together. And if it's not, I think Hovland's going to get someone else good to go with as well. Yeah,
and I think, again, when it comes to 4 balls, I think you could definitely make some adjustments there. Like you said, you can put Straka with anybody, you can put Shane Lowry with anybody, but in the alternate shot format, I think those teams that you see first thing Friday morning are 99% going to be the same teams you're going to see on Saturday morning.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're not focusing on the US team here in this show, but like their pairings are obvious, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think for the most part, we know it's going to be Xander and Cantlay. We know it's going to be Thomas and Spieth. We know it's going to be, or I think it's going to be Morikawa and Homer. I don't know if you agree. Like, does it have to be Scheffler and Burns all the way through to make it worth even taking Burns?
No, and I think anyways that's a better 4-ball team anyways than an alternate shot. But I mean, when you think about the options, like, they're not going to throw Brian Harman out there first thing in the morning. I think the one name to consider, if you're thinking who may go out first with Scotty Scheffler, an alternate shot that nobody's talking about, it's probably Brooks Koepka. But I have no idea where his mindset or his game is right now. So.
Yeah, agreed. I think that the one idea that we kind of floated just now and again, I don't want to talk too much on the USA, but like, if you are going to somehow break that Spieth and Thomas pairing up that people wouldn't necessarily think would be broken up, I could see Thomas and Ricky. Like, I could see Ricky going out, and then you put Harman with someone like a Scheffler. But I think this is where it's going to come down to, is a management of these 2 stars, and it's going to be Rory and Scheffler. Like, if they let Scheffler just go out with Burns all the time, I think it can be to their detriment, especially in foursomes. And I think if they don't give Rory comfortable pairings and just kind of hope he's going to carry around a bit of a corpse, then I think that could be a problem. So,
yeah, and I think with Rory too, I think he almost has earned the right to pick his partners, right? Kind of within reason, right? Like, Aberg's probably going to be with Hovland. So Lowry and Fleetwood are very clearly probably the 2 guys Rory would want to play with. I could see him playing with Matt Fitzpatrick if they want to get a little bit funky with some things, but he'll be very happy with Lowry and with Fleetwood this week.
So I just don't know whether this dynamic of Rory and Lowry is what we think it is. Like they got waxed in that against, and I know everybody did, right? Like it's not just down to them, but Rory had a bad Whistling Straits, and I think to your point earlier about the one being the most likely to miss one is him, because I think he just gets so emotionally drained being the guy. Whereas I think Ryan relishes it. I think Hovland's young enough not to care. Like I think it's Rory that needs that little break, and I think you're right. I think he picks his players. So if he's picking Fleetwood and Lowry, then great. Like you want him to feel the most comfortable. There's something about it I just can't shake about the Rory Lowry thing, and maybe it's just the one match I'm basing it on.
Yeah, I just think in this format, like I think there's gonna come a point where Rory needs to be the guy, but right now he doesn't want to be he doesn't want to go out first Friday morning. He doesn't want to go out first on Sunday against Justin Thomas in that match. That's not who he is or what he wants to do. That's where you put Jon Rahm. Like he's that guy. And if Rory just can kind of find the right groove, I think he'll be very successful this week. But he does not want to be that vocal leader or that guy going out first this week.
If we're saying it's not going to be Rory and Fleetwood going out first, are you putting Hatton and Rahm out first, or are you going Hovland and Aberg?
I'm putting Hatton out first. Absolutely. That's a spicy duo you have there. And they're both playing great. I mean, Hatton, he should have won Wentworth by 4 shots. Like, let's be real. He gagged that one away. But yeah, I would absolutely put that team out first. Yeah.
And look, I think the beautiful thing about Hatton and Rahm is it could boil over, but I think that's what you almost want in this format, right? Like it's not going to boil over to the fact they're going to actually come to blows against each other, but I think they're both going to get so wound up at their own game that they could be some detriment. I don't know. Like it's so. Whereas like the USA pairings are so structured and so obvious, I think, I know a lot of people think Brian Harman could be good and is probably going to get left out to maybe the team's detriment. Like I think that the European one, even with the practice pairings that we've seen, is so hard to call. Like I can't pin my hat on what's going to happen after that morning session.
Yeah, I think for the Euros, they rally around the common goal. They're even if they're not on paper the underdog, they're always the underdog, right? Yeah. It's kind of the way it is. But yeah, like I remember Hatton and Rahm played together at Wentworth on Sunday. They had a front row seat. Rahm was fist pumping on 18 when Hatton made that birdie putt. So like, I think these guys do get along really well. They may not play on the same schedule. They may not play with each other all that often, but I absolutely love that pairing. I think they're going to be awesome.
And I was such a big advocate for Rory and Hovland at Whistling Straits. Mm-hmm. It didn't come about, and that's why I was kind of Rory and Aberg this time. Looks like that's not going to come about. Where do you think the Ryder Cup is won and lost for Europe this week?
Well, I always want to say singles, but I think it has to be foursomes because that's their format. If they don't get off to a fast start both days, if they're down 3-1 first thing Friday morning, you got to sound the alarms. It's going to be tough to come back from that. So, yeah, I think those morning alternate shot sessions are going to be huge for them. And that's why I think they're going to send out the same 4 teams both days.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think for me with the foursomes thing, like we've seen Europe come back from 3-1 down in the morning session, but it's been 3-1 down in 4 balls. To your point, like they have to take back to foursome. So I think that Europe go out fast. They win 3-1 in the opening session. I think they probably split the afternoon 2-all, and we're looking at a 5-3 start for Europe. That's an ideal scenario for me. One that I think is 1 realistic and 2 kind of what we need to happen. I don't think we ever really need to win these 4-ball sessions to win the Ryder Cup, and certainly in the singles it does go the Americans' way more often than not. But even that I don't think is necessarily going to be the case this time. Like I know that there's this kind of big focus on singles and Americans, but like I'm very wary of Max Homer. I think he'd be really good, but like when you look at Xander and Cantlay are the 2 probably the most solid players you can ask for on the Ryder Cup. Like they're both beatable head to head. Like, and if they come up against Rahm and Hovland, they're not going to be favourites. And then you've got, I guess if someone like Justin Thomas is going to, I think Justin Thomas has got a massive part to play in this because I think he'll play more than someone of his form is expected to play most times. I think that he is going to be key. So if he has a great Ryder Cup, then he's obviously going to go out and play well in the singles.
Yeah, well, I think, yes. I think that gives Captain Zach Johnson the excuse of, oh, JT and Spieth won, I'm just going to send it back out again.
Yeah.
Right? He's looking for an excuse to let Justin Thomas play 4 times.
Yeah.
Because then he can always look back and say, I just played my best players as much as I could. You know, there's always that. So,
if you're Europe, what is your biggest fear? Like, when it comes to the week and what you think can happen? Is it almost Europe beating themselves in terms of pairings, or do you think the USA can do something that will really kind of throw them off course?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So I think how they set up the course is obviously going to have a huge impact on this. I think they've done all the homework they need to do about where the tees are, where the rough is, what approach buckets, because the main idea here is that they want to take wedges out of the American game. Right? They've done that. I think they're going to set the course up where you cannot hit wedges into every hole. I think it's going to come down to putting, as it always does. And I think they're going to slow down the greens like they always do over here. So I think that's where it kind of gets won or lost is, can the Americans adjust here to the slow greens? If Scotty Scheffler goes out first and starts making every 15-footer he looks at, you can sound the alarms. So yeah, I think putting is going to be huge here.
I think that's the real concern, I guess, is if there's any weakness for Rory McIlroy, it's making those putts in crunch time. If there's any weakness there is a very glaring weakness for Tommy Fleetwood, is making those putts in crunch time. You expect Hatton to make, you expect Rahn to make them, you expect Hovland to make them, even Aberg to this point. It's just those Fleetwoods, even Lowry. Like, I know he gets called a great short game player, but like I can definitely see him missing putts in crunch time. Same with Justin Rose, unfortunately. So it really does depend, I think, on what Rory and Fleetwood do with the putters early on is to where we are. So you mentioned there about course setup. How much of an advantage do you think they can actually make? I know you said about the kind of, you talked about the wedges there and taking those out of the players' hands, but like, my initial thought was like it's overplayed this time around because this is a course that suits the biggest hitters and that favours both teams. Like, and I don't know if I've changed my mind on that. So.
Yeah, well, it's not just about rough length, right? At the last Ryder Cup in France, it was about rough length. It was just so long that like they just couldn't get out of it. But yeah, I think those approach buckets are huge because like from 160 to 175 yards, right? That European team is just as good as the American team. So I do think it plays a factor. And then also how the course is going to be set up from a sort of player A, player B standpoint. You know, when you look at alternate shots and who's teeing off on kind of what holes, it's skewed pretty heavily where one player needs to be the dominant approach player, right? And the other guy is going to hit more tee shots and probably be the better putter. How that shakes out for a guy like Rory McIlroy, I'm not 100% sure because I think he's going to end up needing to make a lot of those putts. But like you think again of like a Rahm Hatton pairing, it's very clear Hatton is going to be the A player who's going to tee off on those odd holes, have most of the approach shots, and Rahm's going to be just hitting drivers and putters. So I think that's how they're going to have an edge here.
Yep, absolutely. Let's take a quick break here just to focus on our audio listeners. So Daily Fantasy Sports Picks and Bets, the mix. You're listening to the DP World Tour Picks and Bets show. Obviously, Ryder Cup this time around. Normally with Skylar Hoke, but he's off for the week. I'll be filling in beautifully for him here. Ryan, let's talk about bets now. Let's actually go into specific markets. I'm just bringing up your bets that you posted earlier in the week. Is this like the ones that you posted earlier in the week? Is that finalized? Are you adding more?
Yeah, that's it. I'll bet the matchups when they come out.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but yes, those are all the props that I'll be partaking in this week.
Okay, so let's just look at the European ones then. So Victor Hovland plus 550 for top European. I'm not sure if that price has changed since then. And Ludwig Aberg, top European rookie, plus 165. So I've got two thoughts on this. One, I think I initially was all over Hovland, but I don't know why, but for some reason I felt like I preferred the idea of Hovland when McIlroy was with Aberg. And I don't know why. I just But if you believe that Aberg and Hovland are going to make a great pairing, then I think that's the bet, because I think that ultimately he's the person you can hang your hat on to be five sessions, hit the Rahm. So we've kind of discussed that. Is that the line of thinking, just the opportunity cost, or do you think it's the Aberg factor for you?
It's both. Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to get the best partner for all the sessions. He could play with Aberg 4 times. I think that's entirely possible. Maybe one afternoon he plays with Nikolai potentially. But yeah, I mean, I think Hovland is the biggest lock on the team to play all 5 sessions.
Agreed.
I think he's in the best form out of anybody, and I think he's going to have the best partner. So kind of a no-brainer for me. I obviously wish I could tout somebody at much deeper odds, but that's what we got.
I think when it comes to it, like this event is already hard enough to bet, so I think you have to go with the structure like that. And I think to the point, like, he is the most obvious. Like I could definitely see Rory. I think Rory will sit. I think he'll play 4 out of 5, and I think that is again, like, I think he's definitely possible playing 5, but he's a slightly shorter odds. So I could just see him halving a match or something like that.
Well, and after you get out of alternate shot, not that it matters too much, but like you think about who the Rahm partners could be in a 4-ball. Like, he may end up with Sepp Straka for a session. Yeah. He may end up with Matt Fitzpatrick. He may end up with you just don't know where that's going to go.
So this was my point about. So you're talking about Aberg, top European rookie here. This was where I actually think, and to be honest, I think there's only one threat to this. I don't think Højgaard and McIntyre play enough. I think Sepp Straka could be a threat to this bet in the sense that you just mentioned there that he could go out with Rahm in 4-balls, and I think that's something they could do twice. So I think he's got the opportunity to go out 4-ball. I think he'll go out in 4-balls twice anyway, and then he's got the opportunity to win a singles. I think he's, again, it's 18 holes against whoever. So if he goes up against Brian Harman, I'm absolutely confident he can beat him. I know Brian Harman's got that in him and stuff like that. But I think Sepp is the only threat to this Aberg bet, but he's got to go perfect, whereas Aberg might only have to win 3 of 4, whatever.
Yeah, and I'm honestly surprised the Aberg number wasn't lower. Like, it could have been a plus 120 or plus 125 pretty easily. I mean, he could play 2 more matches than any other European rookie. So
yeah, I think that's right, and I think like they've made it very clear what they think of him. I think he was on that team before he even won that event. He's then won that event, so even better, right? He's got the perfect setup. We don't know what he's going to do at Marco Simone because we haven't seen him do it, but there's no reason to think that he won't. So yeah, absolutely understand those. I think for me, the one little bit of value I quite like on the European points scorer is Tommy Fleetwood, because he's just behind that bracket of the top 3 guys, and I think he's capable of playing 5 games as well. Like, if he's going to start off with Rory, start hot, maybe they go out for 2 sessions. I don't know who they're going to drop Fleetwood for. So I think that's a decent bet there. He's about plus 750. I think is the best price. Plus 650. Sorry. And then I think it's so tough. Like, I really want Matt Fitzpatrick to have a good Ryder Cup. Like, I really want it to happen, but it relies on probably a Justin Rose having a really good performance and starting off day 1 well.
Yeah, and I think it's been obviously said 1,000 times how he's a completely different player now. He's got won another elevated event, but I think it's more than that. I think it's now he's playing back in Europe. He just got engaged. He's back in really good form. I mean, each of his last few starts has been great. Obviously, he should have won the Omega. I don't know what the hell happened there, but he didn't. I just think he's ready, and I do expect him to play well. I just don't know how much he's going to play. Yeah,
I think that's the thing for me. Like, he is definitely in form. 2nd at the BMW, 9th at the Tour Championship. Should have won the Omega, like you said, and then even 18th at Wentworth. I think it's solid enough for him. Like, he's not necessarily shown in the past that that's a great golf course for him, given his standards. So,
well, the only guys he lost to are basically all the guys who are here. So,
7 of the 12 were in the top 10. So.
Yeah, they were all up there. So,
are we confident that you can't really afford to play Højgaard or McIntyre in DraftKings, for example?
I would not play McIntyre just because I think he's the one guy who's at risk of just not playing at all until Sunday. And probably at most he's going to play once. I do expect him to sit all day on Friday. I mean, Nikolai's interesting because I think you have to look at the two of them a lot differently. One was an auto qualifier and one was picked. They picked him to be here. You don't pick somebody to sit. And that's kind of how I feel about Justin Rose too. He's not in the best form right now, but he's the veteran, but they picked him. So he's going to play. He probably wouldn't be first in mind that you're like, hey, I'm going to send Rose out first thing in the first session on Friday, but it's alternate shot. It's at home. It's a logical pairing with Fitz. I do think that's going to be one of the first pairings to see go out.
So I think with Rose, I think that the edge that he gets over like a Nikolai, for example, if we kind of put them in the same bucket, is that Rose is more likely to play both formats. Like I could see him playing foursomes and four balls. I think Nikolai, do you think he's strictly four balls, or do you think he can make an impact in foursomes as well?
I think he's strictly four balls.
Yeah. So I think we're looking at kind of Stracker and Højgaard in the same breath.
Yes. I mean, I think Stracker's a better player overall, but I don't expect to see either one of them in foursomes either more.
So no to Robert McIntyre. He's definitely out. I think probably you can do the same maybe with Brian Harman on the other side, even though he's got an ability in him. Obviously, we're not going to talk too much, but do you agree with that?
Yeah, Harman's an interesting one because obviously his skill set seems like it would make sense in alternate shot. Like he's a great iron player, he's a great putter, he can scramble. Like you can trust him to keep the ball in play off the tee. Like I think that makes a lot of sense. But I mean, also Brian Harman hits the ball 250 yards. He plays from different areas. I think he's a better player when he can just do his own thing. Yeah. And I think, again, one of the logical pairings they've talked about is putting him with Brooks, where they're just going to kind of go do their own thing. Yeah. I'll see you at the tee. I'll see you at the green. Let's make some birdies and just let them do their own thing.
Well, the pairings at the moment suggest that he's going to be with Fowler and Brooks is going to be with Clark, is what the pairings say at the moment. But
I don't believe that at all. Yeah. Like I think Fowler and Clark are friends. I think Homa and Clark are friends. Like I see Brooks and Harman for sure going out there.
Yeah, I like it. So let's go a little bit on to DraftKings, and then we'll kind of put polls here. Who are the candidates for captain from the European team? Is there a short list, or do you think you can do different things with a variety of the players?
I think there's a short list. I'm definitely gonna have more European captains than American captains. I think it's exceptionally difficult to have an expensive captain. Yeah. Now, obviously, I would love to play Hovland or Rory. I know they're playing 5 matches most likely. Like, I would love to have them as captains, but I think you got to get their partners, right? You've got to get the guy who's going to play probably 4 matches, maybe 5, maybe 3, but who's going to win with those guys. So, for example, Aberg seems like a great optimal captain, considering who he's going to play with, and he's probably going to play 3 or 4 times. I think Hatton is another cheap captain option who makes a lot of sense. So most of my teams are there, but if you want a captain, Rahm, Rory, or Hovland, I really can't fault you for that.
Yeah, so I think for me it would be, Hovland I think is going to be the most popular player, both as captain and as basic, right? But I think I like the idea of Hatton as captain, and the reason being is one, like you say there, you point to the fact they're very obvious pairing with Rahm and the fact that you probably think they're going to win there. But also, I think he's the type of player that if that pairing doesn't work out, he's still going to get rolled out in some respects, whether it's with Fleetwood, whether it's with Rory or whatever, right? Yeah. So I think he's the type of player that you can kind of hang your hat on, is going to play at least the 4, right? So then you're starting off, let's say, for argument's sake, we're going to start off with Hatton at 11-7. What's your next thing that you do? Do you go and put in the one of Rory, Rahm, and
well, I'm putting in his partner. I'm putting in Jon Rahm with that team, because I think that is what you have to optimize here. Is you want your captain and his partner who are going to win hopefully 3 or 4 matches. Yeah. And so those two are definitely playing together both Friday morning and Saturday morning, I would bet. So I would start there with those two, and then just go to my next favorite team.
So the interesting thing on there is that, like, I don't know, I'm maybe misconstruing what you're saying, but would you say that there's absolutely no point in captaining John Rahm in a lineup view, including Hatton in. Like you would just play it the other way around.
I just think, well, Rahm may be the exception because he's the one guy who is going to play 5 matches and could have 4 different partners, right? Yeah. Probably not, but I think he's the exception. But like Hovland, right? You know for sure he's playing at least twice with Aberg, who's pretty cheap and who's going to play a lot on his own. So if Hovland is your captain, I think Aberg has to be the second person in there. If Rory is going to be your captain, you're not going to then put in Scotty Scheffler, right? It doesn't make any sense. You're going to put Fleetwood, and you're probably going to put Shane Lowry in that team too, because you want to get as much correlation as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next step, so let's say we've started with Hatton and Rahm as our first 2 guys in. Again, this is all kind of aesthetic, I guess. But like, what are you then doing? Are you then picking your favorite USA team, or are you building out the Europe team?
I'm picking my favorite team, so it doesn't matter what nationality. For me, it's probably Hovland Aberg next. Okay. For many people, it's going to be Cantlay and Xander, because again, you know that those guys are probably playing 5 matches. So like, I can't fault you with that. But if you're starting Hatton, Rahm, Cantlay, Xander, so are a lot of other people. Like but yeah, I would put one of those teams in next for sure.
So let's say we're starting, and this is, I don't want to give away people's lineups, but like this is the idea we're putting together, right? So Hatton as captain with Rahm, Hovland, and Aberg. Yep. That leaves you with just under 7K for your next 2. Then what do you do? Like, are you then just looking for the best cheap player overall? Is that Justin Thomas with the opportunity cost?
So I think here again, it could be like, unless you see a duo who you think is going to pair together or pair with the other players you have on this team. Like for example, this team has Rahm already, right? We mentioned maybe they put Rahm out with Sepp Straka, right? So, all right, so you go down and grab Straka. He's down at the bottom. You can then pick any player in the field except for Scotty Scheffler. You can put Rory in there. You could randomly use Patrick Cantlay or Xander as a one-off because you know they're getting 5 matches. So, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Like, I'm going to have a lot of builds that are 5 Europeans, 1 American probably. And that 1 American is probably going to be Xander or Cantlay.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. I mean, the other thing is that we talked about Rose and Fitz, is that you put them in and then you've got the one-off of anyone you want other than Scotty or Rory, right? So if you literally went with Rahm, Hatton, Aberg, but then you probably wouldn't put Aberg in without Hovland.
I wouldn't put him in without Hovland, yeah. But like if you did that team we mentioned with Hatton, Rahm, Aberg, Hovland, like you could then do Justin Thomas and Ricky Fowler, who might play together, right? But also they might not. And also that's going to be a team that 50 other people have. So
yeah, it's tough. Like I think this is where like DraftKings is so great to try and work out, but it's also just a really hard thing to do this week. Like I wouldn't be over invested in DraftKings this week. It's more of a viewing and a prop bet week for me.
Yeah, and I think again, you have to get lucky, obviously, with your captain, and you have to also not overthink it. Like I don't care if Xander and Cantlay are 58% owned in some stuff. Like they are going to play the most matches on the U.S. team. They are probably going to win the most points on the U.S. team. It's about trying to figure out if that's optimal for you.
Yeah, I mean, just here, like the one kind of thing that I've put on there with $700 left on the table is Hatton, Rahm, Aberg, Hovland, Straka, Cantlay.
Yeah.
Which means you can try and improve on Straka, but that's basically in Højgaard or Brian Harman.
Yeah, I mean, and I would say the only tweak that I would make there is just pick Xander over Cantlay to leave more money on the table and be a little more unique, because they're essentially the same player. They're going to play the same matches.
Yeah.
So.
And actually, to be honest, like I probably prefer Xander a little bit. I think I was probably just paying up to. In which case, then you could go Xander and go with Lowry if you think he's going to play.
Xander just had, and again, people are going to look back to Whistling Straits when he got sent out first against Rory and got his butt kicked. I don't think that was the right spot for Xander, and I absolutely wouldn't expect him to be first out on Sunday again.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's put a bow on kind of our final thoughts then. So I think we're both in agreement that we think Europe are going to win. That's kind of our thing. I think they're going to win day one. I think they're going to win day one 5-3. It would be my prediction. I know that's not going much against the grain. Like, that's actually the second most obvious bet. But I think that we go 3-1 in the foursomes, 2-2 in the four balls is a great result, I think, for Europe on day one.
Yeah, I definitely would take them to lead after the first session and after the first day. I think that's a pretty likely outcome. And again, as long as they don't do anything dumb, and I really don't think I expect those same four teams out on Saturday morning. I think they will win that session again. I think they're going to have a pretty sizable lead going to Sunday singles. Maybe it's 9-7, maybe it's 9.5, 6.5, something like that. But obviously when it comes to singles, anything can happen. And I think this is going to come down to a point or two at the very end. I would say, nobody's going to win by more than 2 points this week.
Yeah, I look at 14.5, 13.5 Europe at 12-1 is kind of my prediction. And we've had that a couple of times in the last 10 Ryder Cups, I think. But yeah, I think that probably puts a bow on it. Like we've talked about the kind of chemistry of the players that we expect. We've talked about the pairings that we're going to see on day one. In the past, I think that, and again, you've kind of hammered home this point a couple of times. Like in the past, I think Europe have been guilty of just trying to mix things up a little bit too much, get players out there. You're pretty confident this week, RB, that they're going to just ride those guys as they should and keep the pairings pretty consistent throughout.
What's the, and I think we talked about this a little bit, what's the one pairing that you want to see that we probably won't, but what do you want to see?
Rory and Aberg.
Got it. I would say Rory and Hovland, which again, we all wanted last time. And again, hey, maybe they fall behind and in foursomes on Saturday afternoon, they throw out a Rory Hovland team.
So that the only argument for not playing Rory and Hovland together is that you're weakening the rest of the lineups, right? Like the depth isn't there. But if you just absolutely need a point, there's no reason to think that they won't partner together. And I always find it funny, like if you think you can't put Rory and Hovland together because that's going to weaken the rest of your team, you're not saying much about the confidence of the rest of your team. Like you should be thinking that Rahm and Hatton can go and get you another point, Fleetwood and Lowry can get you another point. Then you've still got Rose, Fitz, Højgaard, Stracker, all these players that could get you a point.
Yeah, and I think again, if everything lines up for it, and for whatever reason you get to a Saturday afternoon, like I could absolutely see Aberg going out with Nicolai in a 4-ball, and have them stack a couple other teams. Like I definitely think that's viable. That's the right format for it. And like you think about the Americans that are going to be out there, like would you be afraid of them playing Wyndham Clark and Ricky Fowler? No. Or like Colin Morikawa and Brooks Koepka? Not really.
I guess it's interesting. Like, how important is pairings in 4-ball? I don't know how long.
It's not. It's important. Well, it's important that you have your best birdie makers out there, who they play with. I agree. It doesn't really make a heck of difference, other than it's fun to play with your friends.
Yeah.
But like Aberg and Højgaard, I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but over the last 8 events, do you think anyone's made more birdies than them? Probably not.
And I think that, like, I've never thought about the Højgaard-Aberg thing, but I think that's right. Like, there's no, like, the one argument, I guess, is that if you have a Justin Rose as your 4-ball partner, you can rely on him to make the par whilst you're going for a birdie that that could be pretty volatile, I guess is the idea, right? Like, he's your safety net. He can contribute a birdie every now and then. Yeah. He's probably going to birdie the par 5 so you can go for an eagle. But everyone should be able to do that as a professional golfer. You just got to pick the person.
I agree. I hope we see it. Look, I mean, you can get Rory Hovland, Nicolai and Aberg, Sepp and Rahm, and like a Fleetwood Lowry group. Like that would be a fun 4 teams to set out on a Saturday.
Like even Fleetwood Hatton, I quite like as a team. Yeah, I'd get them out there. Yeah, it's going to be a really interesting dynamic. I think that the biggest takeaway from this is that you think it's going to be a big week for Victor Hovland. That in itself makes it a big week for Aberg. They're your 2 bets. I was very high on Hovland beforehand. I think I probably still am. And I think
he just doesn't have a weakness. You know, his chipping is so much better. He really is a good putter now, especially over here. And yeah, he's just in such good form.
But I think even like the chipping thing, right? Like in a major, when you really need to gain a birdie and you're trying to chip it out of rough is important. When you're, you know, someone's still got a 35-foot putt to make the birdie and you're just chipping and leaving yourself a 10-foot, it doesn't really matter. Like the very worst case scenario is you have a bad chip and lose one hole and you don't think you can make that back in the next hole. So I think you lose that a little bit. I guess it's just he hits so many mid irons to like 4 feet. Like that's, and I think you're seeing that with Aberg now, which maybe we didn't expect. But like when I was watching him at Crans and at Wentworth was ridiculous.
It was like 150 yards away. He hit it to 2 feet, and I was like, well, yeah, that'll work anywhere.
I wonder if that's what's changed to put them together. Like I wonder if they've just looked at that over a couple of weeks and just gone like they can just do exactly the same thing, and they're really hard to stop. So yeah, look, this whole show was centered around Europe for a reason. Like this is just what we do. It's what me and Sky do week to week. It's what you and Axis do when you come in and fit in with it for us guys. So this is not to say that the USA have no chance. This is not to say that Derby has not got bets on US players. You can find those on his Twitter, or X now, formerly known as Twitter. I think the thing is, like, I definitely now feel confident in Europe, which is the main thing. I think the only thing I don't feel confident at the moment is, do they know what they're doing pairings wise? But sometimes, like you've just said there, maybe the experiment is the beauty of it. Like if you go out there and go, do you know what, let's just stack Rory and Victor, and then all of a sudden Højgaard and Aberg are just absolutely electric together because they're playing their own ball. Like it could be a beauty out of like desperation, I guess. Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, I think the score is going to dictate that, obviously. But if you need a point in 4 balls, why not? I think that's a lot different, like than when the U.S. was sending out a Tiger Phil team for absolutely no reason. I agree. Ryan, I think we'll put a bow on it there. Like I think we've covered pretty much everything you can from a European standpoint. If anyone has any questions, they can obviously what do you even call it now? X us? Like you can't X someone. No, I still call it Twitter. So yeah, you can still tweet us on the app formerly known as Twitter. Put those shouts out there. Rate, review, subscribe the show. Hopefully, it's slightly different, obviously, angle to a betting show week to week. We will get back to those shortly. We are off next week at the very least. I am away, and so is Sky. And then potentially you guys might fill in for us and do a show, but we think we might be off next week, and then we'll pick it up from there. So that's the current plan. But RB, thank you as ever, bud. Stepping in as always, stepping up to the plate. Special shout out to Sky. He's obviously off for personal reasons. Had his first child, so very happy for him. Welcome to the club. Yeah, absolutely. I do not have that experience yet, so I trust you guys. It is a beautiful moment. Very happy for Sky, obviously. Didn't want to shout it out at the top of the show, but it's great to save a little second. Very European name too, so he has. I love it. And we hope. I mean, I don't know if he'll actually advocate for just calling him Ludwig by the end of the week. Like, how long is too long before you can change a name? Like, you can have sort of like name. Well, I told him this worked out so well because like these are the nights he's up all night. We're going to be up at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning for some early golf. So it's perfect. Yeah, love it. RB, thank you very much, bud. All right, see you, Tom. Thanks, bud. And thanks all for listening.